You are listening to Indie88. I'm Lana Gay. So very excited to take you track by track through the new July Talk album out January 20th called Remember Never Before. And joining me in the studio, I have Leah and Peter Dreimanis. And we're going track by track through the records.
How exciting.
Very excited. And congratulations on the release. How are you feeling?
I don't know, you work on a record for a few years every time, and so it's very exciting when it finally comes out, and it's chaotic, and you just try to treasure every moment, and it's exciting to put something out and have people reflect on it, I guess.
I usually get a bit puddly around this time because it's like you get to keep the record safe as this thing that only you and the people you share it with are listening to, and then when it gets out there, it's like people get to have opinions about it and share those opinions with you, and sometimes they're not very nice.
So you are saying that are you going to take a break maybe this weekend and just kind of bask in the glow of releasing it and not necessarily follow up on all the
We'll see.
commentary?
I mean, like I always say, like, I'm not going to read anything or listen to anything. I don't care what anyone thinks. And I do think I've grown a bit of a thicker skin over the pandemic, but we'll see.
Now,
I feel good about it.
Can I ask you about your expectations going into the record? Because it was kind of a weird time. You know, the pandemic hit. I feel like we had a taste of what was to come with I Am Water quite a while ago. So did everything kind of morph and change because of the pandemic, or was it still the same record that you set out to make when you started?
I think the thing we realized that we provide to people that's really important is energy. And so that was like a word that we really focused on. And other than that, I think we kind of just went into the studio because that's what we do and that's what bands do. And we don't really know how to stop working. And we didn't really stop working over the pandemic. And so as soon as we kind of like got the drive-in show done and out of the way, like we maybe took a couple months to recover. And then it was just like, all right, let's bubble up and get back in there.
And I Am Water was a sort of thesis song, right? Like there was unintentional. You never try to do that. But the minute we had that song, we were like, oh, let's follow that. As our friend Graham Walsh that we worked with always said, is like, follow the fun, you know? And I think that this whole record was just really about, I don't know, it's like, okay, we all hit the pandemic. We all had to sit still. Okay, what did you miss? Like, what was so special about life before? Like, put that on the record. If it means so much to you, why not make your art about that? And it was a kind of a cool challenge to like find hope, you know, find joy and find what you were missing all that time. And so we just tried to capture what it felt like to play music together, the six of us, and that's a very palpable thing that I think a lot of people have connected with when we play live. And it was kind of our job to try to capture that feeling, you know, think with our guts, think with our instincts, and try to turn our brains off and just be ourselves on record, you know?
We've got so many great songs to get to. Let's chat about After This. Why was this one the perfect song to start off the new album?
I mean, it came from a dream, which I think kind of speaks to, Graham Walsh, who we worked with, always says, follow the fun. And so it kind of is in line with that, and also just like really instinctual and not knowing where it's going to end up. And we would kind of like just get in the studio and be like, let's try it this way. Or we'd listen to another song as a reference and be like, let's try it this way. And so this one we, you know, tried like in a couple different styles, and then it just kind of like lyrically, I guess it's exploring the feeling of remembering that through darkness, like there will be another side of that, and the feeling of like, I can't wait to get back on my feet is just something that I've never felt so much before as I did during the past couple of years, being knocked down and like ready to get back at it.
July Talk and Certain Father, that is track 2 off their brand new album out on January 20th called Remember Never Before. That one features Spencer Krug. What's the connection there? How'd that happen?
Are you a big Wolf Parade fan and Sunset Rebdown and all that?
Yes, I think Wolf Parade was definitely a band that changed me.
Yeah.
Big
in the
time.
2000s. Huge. Yeah.
Same. And we were lucky enough to meet those guys at, which was it, Hillside?
Yeah, I think
a
so.
number of years ago.
Yeah.
And I think like the Spencer's voice came up as the perfect addition to Certain Father in terms of adding another entity and another energy. And we just kind of like got really nervous about asking him, and then just like we were just like, we just got to do it. Like talked ourselves up, and Peter wrote him an email, and they actually like had this really beautiful email exchange about the song.
Yeah, we feel really grateful to kind of have been able to, when you work with someone and collaborate with them, your friendship becomes so much deeper than the small talk that you usually get between shows or whatever. And when we were making that song, it was like, okay, well, we have my role as this somewhat kind of storyteller, I guess, and then Leah's side operating on this kind of counter, and it felt like it needed an eye in the sky. Like it felt like it needed a Bowie. It needed like this feeling of somebody looking down and seeing all sides, I guess. And Spencer's voice is something that like Leah kind of introduced me to Wolf Parade, because she had gone to university in Montreal and like knew that scene really well, and for whatever reason I didn't know them too much coming from Alberta, and Spencer was just always someone I really connected with his art. I think also because he plays piano and the way he approaches music is very theatrical, I guess, you know. So it just felt like a perfect time. And again, like Leah said, we were really nervous to reach out. But when we did, with his response, and immediately his response was just like, well, what's the song getting at? And what are you trying to say, you know? And I thought that was such a generous answer to come at a younger band with when they reach out to someone that they look up to be generous enough to have like a conversation about the substance of it. And we got into it. I don't know how much you want to go into it, but this song was written at a time when a lot of my friends, I shouldn't say a lot of my friends, a few of my friends were kind of getting swept up into kind of Jordan Peterson and male, I don't know, gender theory when it comes to keeping things regressively how they are, and the backlash of progress, I guess. And I get really frustrated when it comes to fighting against progress, and keeping things the same and the status quo, because I think that the only way to live is a hopeful way to live, where the future can be a place where we know more than we know today. And so Certain Father was about kind of the devil on your shoulder in everybody's life, that stands there and tells you to play it safe and keep things the same, and trying to escape that, I guess. And Spencer was just so generous in like talking that out, providing reflections on that, and then writing parts that like the first time we heard it, it was like, I feel like I levitated a little bit. I was just so grateful to him. It's like a really special collaboration. It was fun.
I'm excited I don't want to jump around too much, because I feel like the eye in the sky role, now that you say that, I think about songs like God, Mother, Fire, and other songs that have this kind of additional element to them. I guess, well, we'll have to talk about that in a minute. I'm sorry. I feel like we got to keep on going track by track, and we're already only at song number 3 right now with Human Side. Human Side, who was this song written for? Because it almost sounds like a statement within conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think we started writing it like in 2015. So
For Touch. It was supposed to be on Touch.
So it's pretty integral to like our identity as a band, and the idea of Human Side and what that meant to us. And really it was about witnessing the microcosms at our shows, and how we just like wanted to inspire people to be their badass, freaky deaky selves, free from like the confines and the societal norms and all of that kind of stuff. And I think we feel so lucky that people come out to our shows and they do feel free to be themselves. And so Human Side, I think, was kind of written as like a gift to those people, and it's taken on many forms, and it's been about a lot of different things. And when we finally reawoke it for this era of July Talk, it kind of got smashed together with this song idea that Pete had, that was There's a Crack in the Wall. And yeah, and then it like, I guess like personally, the ending, I think, like, I really wrote for myself. There's a hole in the sky. Up in the sky, and we don't know what it is, but I know them terrified. Like, that's really how I feel often in my heart of hearts when I'm like up at night worrying and fretting, and I come from like a long line of worriers and fretters.
Same.
Yeah, it's genetic. And then having this like other voice that's saying like, what are you so worried about? Like, come on, like, live with fear. To live is to live in fear, and how freeing that can be.
You're listening to Toronto's new alternative, Indie88. I'm Lana Gay, joined by Leah and Peter of July Talk, and we're celebrating the release of their brand new record. That was track 4, and Hold. I have my little notes just about the softness in that one. Like, there is something about not only the word hold, but that the element of the melody. Yet the words, though, you have heretics and you have hateful pricks. And you're sticking your tongue at the queen. Was that a balance of lyric and
life?
I think it's like a love song about conflict, you know? It's like about unconditional love, you know? It's like the verses occupy a space where you're like expressing your frustration, and like communication is so hard. And then I think the chorus, like so many choruses often do, you know, you end up in a space where you want to look at things from above, like we were talking about, and what you realize is that unconditional love is just that. It's unconditional. And so the chorus is sort of stating like, you can kind of do anything and I'll still love you, you know? And I think that it's something that's really hard to say in a song without being schmaltzy, and I think we just tried to walk that line and let our instincts do the talking. But it was important on this record, right? Because we have like, you know, Touch has Strange Habit, and Pray For It has Pay For It, and there's always this like side of our band that like I love catering to, but I'm also want to be like very, very careful with, and like it's very fragile, and you don't want to knock it off the fence any direction. And so Hold was the one where it was like, okay, this has to like be the one that occupies that sort of like strange Portishead side of July Talk that, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
I think also, like, we're all to varying degrees like victims to the systems that we live within and uphold, and it's really hard for that to not enter relationships and dynamics between people. And so like that line of like, well, what's that got to do with this, is like something that I just love that, and I think, and I feel it resonates so heavily, because it's just like when horrible things are happening and people are hating each other baselessly, it's like it's impossible for that stuff to not affect you and to not, you know, touch you in like a
weasel its way in.
Yeah, in like a historical way, in the ways in which like that's always shown up in your life, or things touch on like your deepest fears, and then next thing you know, you're like yelling at someone that you love, and it doesn't really make any sense. But
if you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with Leah Faye and Peter Dreimanis of July Talk, and we're going track by track through their brand new record, Remember Never Before. Why Remember Never Before?
I think when we wrote this record, we'd already put out our pandemic record. You know, like our last record was kind of our thoughtful, more like reflective record that we wrote in the Trump era, where everything was super dark as well. And so by the time we wrote this, we were really excited to focus on our role as like Leah said, you know, providing energy. And I think that Remember Never Before felt like a statement, a paradoxical kind of way, where it was about finding your way to a spot where you felt truly amazed and in shock. And the back cover of the album is this photograph of my friend John, that we lost last year. But there's this photograph that was taken of him when we were like 15 or something like that at a show in a basement, and he's just like in the front row of the show, and he's like absolutely in it. And I just feel so I feel like it's important for us to all remember what we missed so much and like get back to it in our own ways and in the new ways, in the new people we are. And so I think that this record in general feels like a commitment to trying to find out how to be in awe within your new you, you know? And so the title just felt like it fit.
Perfect. I have a lot of questions about Godmother Fire, which is, the O is blocked out in God.
She's Jewish.
It's a Jew thing.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know about this.
No, yeah, it's just like you just don't write the O.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Peter just like picked it up a long time ago.
Okay.
And we don't, you know, we don't believe in a patriarchal white God, you know,
as evident in this song.
In a standard sense, but we end up kind of
Grappling reckoning.
with it. Yeah, totally. I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah. The melody for this song came from Josh initially. And there's this song by Jenny Lewis called A Man, Me, Then Jim. And it's a Rilo Kiley song.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like the first verse is Jim's perspective, and then, or a man, and then Jenny, and then Jim's, kind of how I took it. And I feel like this song is like the first part is, for a while we were calling it the devil, oddly. But the first verse is like very much about God, and God is like in this state of dismay, taking a tour around everything that we've become and everything we've done, and is saying like, let's burn it all down and start again. And then the next part like is about just like the fierceness of mother energy. And I was thinking a lot about my mom and everything she protected me from. And so I kind of like went back to this like very specific memory of her where she encouraged me and helped me to burn a box of this stuff that I was keeping under my bed that was kind of like energetically tying me to someone that I no longer had in my life. And it was like the middle of winter, and we just went out in my backyard and set it on fire. And and she's like a person who, she grew up with like a mom who was very religious and Catholic, and a father who was very fiercely spiritual but didn't believe in organized religion. And it kind of made her like a fiercely spiritual person who marches to the beat of her own drum and takes what she likes and leaves the rest. And that's kind of what she raised me to do, and question everything. And so, yeah, and then the fire part is just kind of like the fire energy at the end of the song that it doesn't really make sense. Like, it's got a verse, a chorus, kind of, and like a chorus B, and then maybe
Classic
another
Josh
verse,
Warburton songwriting.
and then it's just like, let's party on the way out. And that kind of, to me, feels like the fire energy and Godmother Fire.
And the chorus.
And the chorus.
Of course. Well, let's get to it now. Godmother Fire. I always want to say, is it God space mother slash space fire? I don't want to say godmother like it's your fairy godmother.
But I mean, like, that would be fine too. And it's something we talked about when we named the song. We were driving in the van and we were like, Godmother Fire. Yeah, that's sick.
You are listening to the Your First Listen album premiere special of July Talk's new album, Remember Never Before. And that was When You Stop. I like the lyric, when you stop, you'll find out what you're running from, is really, really memorable. When the world stopped for you all, what did you find out you were running from?
Like a lot of people, I just kind of kept some doors closed inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I had gone through a lot of, you know, just pretty intense suffer for your art kind of time coming out of my teens into my 20s, where I was very dead on convinced that I had to damage myself in a lot of different ways in order to exist and matter, I guess. I think that I was convinced at that time that I was sort of unremarkable and I needed to figure that out. And therefore I pushed myself into some pretty toxic behavior where I was just kind of unkind to myself for a period. And of course then I met Leah and Josh and Ian and Danny and went on tour and became an adult, and like everybody, you learn how to cope and you learn how to be kinder to yourself. But there was still these doors that were just closed from that period, and I think that over the pandemic, I was forced And when I say forced, it was a must. It became a must to open those doors up and figure out how to deal with them, which is really hard to do. And then once you do it, it suddenly feels like you couldn't figure out why it was hard.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
Even though you end up with a mess. People say, go to therapy, it'll all work out. It's like, well, when you go to therapy, it just turns into a giant mess in front of you and you have to sort it out. But
it's almost like you can at least see the mess.
Totally.
For what it is. And
I think that I feel very privileged that I was able to do that. But, the biggest privilege was just the friends and family surrounding me that helped me through that. So when you stop, we went into the studio with Kevin at our jam space just up on Keel, and we were just jamming, and the song came about in a moment. It was like, no ideas beforehand. You just walk in and start playing, and I was pacing around the room as I heard this drum beat that just felt so persistent, like it couldn't be stopped even if you tried. And I just started singing that to myself. When you stop, you find out what you're running from. And it was one of those times you trust your gut, you know what I mean? And it felt like all of the anguish and all of the struggle that we've all been through, everybody listening to this has a version of that, especially over the last couple of years. And so it just kind of washed over us in the space that day. And I think that the rest of the process was just trying to capture that energy, as you do. But it was a special moment for sure.
I feel like we're going really deep here. I like the fact that...
That's okay.
No, it's great. It's interesting, though, because there's a lot of juxtaposition about the energy of your live show and how intense you guys are live and how people are always dancing and moving. But really, there's so much, heart and soul and personal experience in these songs when we talk about them. It really moves me.
For me, when I had time to stop, there was... certain things that I guess by no fault of my parents, but there's certain things that I wasn't able to look at from my family history and learning about epigenetics and stuff like that. I just found it was going to be really important to me to not karmically and cosmically pass on certain things to the future of the planet. And so I kind of went back and did some family history stuff and also I think just living in Canada as a settler and living on this land and knowing that I'm not of this land and grappling with that, it really helped me to learn about how I got here and how my grandparents got here and just filling in the blanks of some of those mysteries, because it's almost when you feel alien or you don't know where you come from, there's a lot more opportunity to kind of hate yourself. And I found that it was really helpful for me to figure out where I come from, and I'm still on that journey, but that's kind of, I found the thing that I guess had been nagging at me for years and I didn't know, and then when we had time to do it, it was really important.
You happened to bring something in with you into the studio. It looks like a 1980s Fisher-Price cassette player. Oh, it is. Ding, ding, ding. It is. I saw the oatmeal-y brown and then the 4 buttons.
Oh my God, and they feel so good to press.
Yeah. So what is, can you tell us what is this all about?
Well, yeah, I had this, I don't think it wasn't this exact one, but I had this Fisher-Price cassette player when I was a kid and used to just carry around Beatles cassette tapes and stuff like that, Buddy Holly and whatever. But Peter found this tape in our storage space when he was looking for something else. And it kind of hit him on the head, serendipitously almost. And it was my mom's birthday was coming up and we wanted to make a big deal out of it and didn't know what to do. And this tape just kind of made itself known. And he brought it home and we put it in the cassette player, and it's my grandmother speaking to God on her, I think she's 52, her 52nd birthday in the 80s. And No, 55. Anyway, we ended up putting a clip of it on after this.
How did you feel when you heard that?
I felt like she's talking about the end of the world, and she's talking about heading towards self-destruction, but I felt oddly comforted by it. Just to know that she was pondering these big things, and she was scared, and she was worried, and she had every right to be worried. And she'd seen a lot and been through a lot, but she kept going, and she loved and lived and felt that life was worth living until the day she died. So I guess just like going through everything that we've all been through over the past couple of years, and all the worry and the doomism and just like, the news, everything we're faced with every day. It just like, I found it really comforting to know that one of my ancestors was like going through the same stuff.
I would love to learn more about Raw. I have my notes that say earnest, vulnerable song, but also very contemplative. What were you feeling? What was your headspace like going into that one?
That one, going back to what we talked about a bit with When You Stop, was like, I think the whole record, we were like asking people and asking the listener to think about what they'd been through, who they'd become. And I felt like I had to put my skin in the game, It felt like I couldn't just ask that of someone else without putting myself out on a limb a bit. And that song was written, it took exactly as long to write it as it did to just play, it just like came out. And there's a lot of songs that's the end, they stay between, me and the instrument. And I think that one, it was like, it felt important to share as like, as a way of showing, that I was just invested in Future as I was asking others to be, I guess.